Today we're doing the book of Philippians. What is Philippians known for? Anybody?
Really good verses.
Really good verses. Pro status.
The church in Philippi.
People like it. The church in Philippi.
I don't know what you're actually
I don't know.
Actually, have a lot of notes in the sections of this.
Is there a key word? I
Consider it pure joy.
Oh, you got it.
When you face trials of
That's
many
James.
kinds, because that's James. You're right. I'm quoting the wrong book of the Bible, guys. Okay, choose one or two.
Joy.
Purple. Two is red.
People like to talk about the book of Philippians being full of talking about joy and contentment.
We just talked about joy in youth group.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? Paul was where when he wrote this book? In a very happy place
Jail.
where he could
Heaven.
write about joy.
Heaven.
Jail! Correct. He was in prison in Rome, but yet he's writing about joy and contentment when he should be writing about, why is it so cold in here? And there's no good food, and I can't go outside, and this guard is really mean to me, and he should be complaining about all the things, but no, he's
I'm
not.
not eating that place, man.
There's rats. There's rats eating my snacks and biting me. And fleas on rats.
Please, all right.
Don't forget about
All right, so the book of Philippians is a letter to a church where?
Philippi.
Philippi, yes. Any guesses on when Paul visited this church and planted this church?
In his first missionary journey. I'm
No.
just guessing.
No.
Third.
Second.
Fourth.
Yes.
Oh,
Paul is our author. This is a letter.
yeah.
It's a little bit different of a
And
letter.
the third.
Yeah,
Second
third
and
too.
third.
A little bit different of a letter in that people like to say it's made up of short, reflective essays. So not like a necessarily as continuing the thoughts. I mean, they're all definitely connected, but just the literary structure of how it is written out. This is written to the Christians at Philippi, which is a church that Paul planted on his second missionary journey and visited the third, Eddie. You're correct. Where is it? Open up your map. Where's Philippi?
It's like in the northern part.
Northern part.
northwest of
This is actually considered to be the very first church established on the European continent. So this is modern day Greece. This is the northern part of Greece. If you look at your map, and where Turkey is considered Asia, Greece is considered Europe. So, first European church, kind of cool. The church, Philippi was, do I know anything about the city? I forget. I read about it.
Do I know anything about the city? I don't know.
Who did he plant this church with?
Well,
Silas.
Silas, correct. Who else?
Timothy?
Timothy, correct. He had grabbed Timothy at this time from Turkey, where Timothy was. Remember, Timothy was from the Galatia region. And one other guy.
Is it on the main character list?
Barnabas.
No,
Sunday
it's not
school?
Barnabas.
He said John.
Barnabas was split off at the second missionary journey, remember? Based because of John Mark had left them, and
Yeah, they
Paul's
were
like, I'm not
mad
working
at
with
each
that
other.
guy again. And he left them.
That dude.
Open up to Acts 16.
It's
Epaphroditus?
Epaphroditus.
It's not, he did not plant the church with Epaphroditus.
Also, no one names their kids that these days, and that's a shame.
That's a good name.
Acts 16. Right? Is that
You named kids Oluwatomi.
So what I noticed that was really interesting, Paul had a vision to go here, the Macedonian man, and he was asking him to come over to Macedonia and help us. So we decided to leave for Macedonia at once, having concluded that God was calling us to preach the good news there. Now, verse 11, the first word in my Bible. Hope it's in yours too.
From.
16:11 in Acts.
From. Acts.
Oh,
I'm in Acts.
Acts 16. Mine
From
says
Troas. We put out to sea and
Oh, there it
sailed
is.
straight.
What's the pronoun there?
I don't
Oh,
understand
we.
English.
We.
Because Luke went with them.
Oh, Kai got it. Okay,
Yes, Kai.
what I noticed here is like we, like all of a sudden becomes in first person.
Oh yeah, we were talking about this.
We were.
Oh, it says
Cause
Troy.
who wrote Acts?
Luke.
Luke. So who was with them?
Luke.
Luke.
Whoa.
There's the other guy.
Good job, Luke. Proud of you.
So Luke joined them
Oh, Luke.
and went to Philippi. So Luke was part of planting this church too. Is because he's not a main character of the letter. He's not mentioned in the letter. But that's just a side note that Luke was part. If you want to read Acts 16, talks about the planting of the church. But of course, the Philippian letter was written later after the church was established when Paul was in prison. And no longer was he visiting them in person. He had to send them a letter to talk to them. All right, so this letter was to the church Christians at Philippi, and also believers everywhere get to listen in because we're special. And Paul wrote this nice open letter. And it got shared around. Written in 61 AD from Rome during Paul's imprisonment. So, Paul was in prison at Rome. That's his last journey of where he goes to Rome on our map. Why did he... Oh, main characters. Paul, Timothy, and Epaphroditus. Any guesses on why Epaphroditus is mentioned?
Because it's a cool name.
Yeah, it's a cool name. Paul's like, hey, you got a guy there with a cool name. Want to hear this cool name? Epaphroditus.
Yeah.
No, why?
Because he's cool like that.
He's not... Well, of course he's cool.
I don't know why.
Only
Why?
one
Just
L.
tell us.
Look at 2:25
Ugh.
of Philippians. Sorry, we're back in Philippians.
2:25 says, I have thought it necessary to send you Epaphroditus, my brother and fellow worker, fellow soldier, and your messenger and minister to my need.
So he's the letter carrier?
Yes, he's the letter carrier. But he was, where's he from, you think?
Galatia?
No?
Rome. I mean, just like that.
Okay,
Somewhere else.
this letter is in response to Epaphroditus' visit.
Oh.
Where do you think Epaphroditus is from?
Philippi.
He's from Philippi. So Epaphroditus came out.
Back to you.
Yeah, he's sending him back. So Epaphroditus came from Philippi to Paul with a gift of money. So Paul was in prison, so he couldn't really work. So he was dependent on other people giving him money so he could eat, that he could live. He was under kind of house arrest, so he probably had to rent that house. Otherwise, he would be in like a normal like dungeon prison or something. So he had to have money. He had to have support, but he couldn't work. House arrest gave him more freedom to like write letters and have visitors. Right? People could come visit him. People could come stay with him. So Epaphroditus brought a monetary money gift from the Philippian church to Paul. So this letter is also a thank you note. You guys ever written thank you notes for presents you've gotten or gifts you've gotten? That's a good practice. I'm terrible at it.
My kid did not do it. My senior graduation.
You should do that. It's a
Don't be a
good
Nelly.
gesture. Now the question is, do you write a thank you note for getting a thank you note?
Yes.
No.
If someone gives you a thank you note, should you write them a thank you note for
Yes.
the thank you note for the
Well,
thank you
actually, I
note?
think I have some.
And should they write a thank you
It's
note
very
thanking you
context.
for the thank you note?
Yeah, they're just gonna.
Could never end.
No, the money was a thank you
Okay.
for something else.
So anyway, Epaphroditus had carried a gift with him because, can't trust the mail, especially with money. And so he brought money to Paul, spent some time with him, visited him, told him how the Philippian church was doing, updated him on things. And then Paul wrote a letter, thank you note to Philippians, more than a thank you note, right? He's giving them some encouragement and instruction. And send it back with Epaphroditus. So, that's Epaphroditus. So, that leads us to our purpose. To thank. This is a thank you note. Isn't that cool? To thank the Philippians for the gift they had sent to Paul, and to strengthen those believers by showing them that true joy comes from Jesus Christ alone. Now, we have in this letter one of the coolest poems ever. I think this is one of the best poems ever. Who's it about? in Philippians
Jesus.
2.
Jesus.
Yes, it's
Yes.
about Jesus.
Paul taught, or not Paul, I mean, Pastor Bill taught on it like a couple months ago.
Yes, was that? Did he do
It was
it?
called Break Up With Me, Myself, and I.
He did it for his Christmas devotional.
2?
So Philippians chapter 2 has this amazing poem. It's basically like the whole gospel story in this, how many verses? It's 5-verse poem.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
6 to 11.
No,
6 verses. And it's
yeah.
basically the whole gospel summarized in a really cool way. But he phrases this in a way that you should have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. So it places this example little poem sermon, this poem of Jesus' life for us as an example that we should follow. And he says, in the way that we should live, we shouldn't be selfish. We should work together, love one another. Don't try to impress each other. Don't think of each other as better than yourselves. Do not look to your own interest, but in interest in others too. What can we summarize all that attitude that Christ had? Starts with an H. Humility. So this is like this is known as maybe like the servant poem of Christ, the humility of Christ.
Oh, it says it right there. Humble position.
The humble position of Christ. Who would like to read this for us?
Me!
Okay, Addie, read
Which one?
6 to 11.
Okay.
Listen up and follow
Though he
along.
was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. Therefore, God elevated him to a place of highest honor and gave him the name above all other names, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue declare that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
Boom. So Jesus was God. You guys hear the whole gospel there? Jesus was God. I mean,
So he was God.
I guess it doesn't talk about sin
Yeah.
and why Jesus came. But Jesus was God. He came down. He gave up his divine privileges. He took this humble position, became a baby, a human baby, and he humbled himself and died on the cross. And then God exalted him, the resurrection. So birth, death, resurrection, glorification, right? So this, in these 6 verses, tells the story. And that, at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue declare Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So Jesus' humility is in his life on earth, his human life, is our example. So really, this is kind of the central piece to this whole book. It's cool how the Bible Project lays it out. It actually connects all of this. And really, it emphasizes, how do we best find joy? We talked about this at youth group. What's the difference between joy and happiness?
Joy is your heart, right? And happiness is like the circumstances.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. Kai?
Like, joy lasts like a while, and then happiness is like for a moment.
Yeah, happiness is temporary, and what you said, Livy, it's based on your circumstances, right? So, you find $10 on the street and you buy some ice cream with it. That's pretty happy, right? But then what happens? You have a stomach ache because you got too big of an ice cream because you spent $10 on it. So your happiness is gone. Or Riley bought ice cream. And now he feels sick. No, so happiness is circumstance, right? You find something good happens and you're happy. Then that's over, or it gets taken away. And are you happy anymore? No. But so what is joy then?
It's like the way you look at things and the way you choose to react to it.
So yeah, you can be, you can experience joy regardless of the situation. And the root of that state, that comes from God. but is in contentment. So being Paul, this is why Paul could have joy in prison. Do you think Paul was happy about being in prison?
Yes. Yes, he was happy.
In the human sense of happiness, like we just talked about, like
No.
this is so much fun. No,
I love this.
I love this. This is the best
do this
day of my life.
again.
Yeah.
But he
No.
talks about the good that comes out of it. Because Paul's
Yes.
joy that Christ is working through it.
Right. So he found contentment. He's like, I am here. This isn't the best, most fun situation, but look at all these good things that are coming out of it.
Verse 12.
That's where we can find joy. Even though I can find verse 12.
13.
Where is it?
13 says that, for everyone here, including the whole house, God knows that I am chaste because of Christ. And because of my imprisonment, most of the believers here have gained confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear.
That's so cool. So he's seeing good things coming out of his circumstances. He's finding contentment there. It's not, I'm sure, what he wants. Like in all his letters, when he's writing them, he's like, I wish I could come visit you, right? He has this longing. He wish he could be traveling and visiting the churches he planted, but he doesn't get to. But he finds contentment, and thus he finds joy in his circumstance of being in prison, locked up. So that's contentment. Is the secret to joy. Like, I'm okay right here. I trust God with my circumstances, and this is okay. And then you can start, once you find that place of contentment, you can start to see the good things that are coming out of it, right? Because otherwise, if you're just like, if you're just, man, this is terrible, miserable, and then someone says, well, but there's so much good stuff happening out of it. And then it just kind of like sours you. You're like, but it's still terrible. But you have to, like, finding contentment is kind of the secret to finding joy and seeing what good God brings out of it. So, anyway, that's the centralness of that poem about Jesus. Jesus did that in the ultimate way. Like comparing Jesus' status in heaven to his status on earth. Like, which one was better? Which one was more fun for Jesus?
Heaven.
Yes!
Yeah.
He had all power, right? And then he becomes a stinky little baby who has to wear a diaper.
He's probably really cute.
I'm sure he was a cute
The
little
mom
baby because
was
all babies are
very
cute.
No,
But
he didn't have to.
can you just imagine going back to being in diapers? And like you can't walk.
Give it a couple of years to do that.
But Dad, he didn't
Like
know.
that would be a humiliating, like total reduction, terrible experience
Yeah.
for us. Going from God to a baby in a diaper, like
Remember, he
huge
didn't know.
span
He
of
was
reduction.
actually just a normal human. He had to realize that he was the Son of God.
So, but anyway, he got reduced to that. He went from God
No,
status
he
to baby
chose
status.
to do that.
Yes.
Don't say he got reduced.
He was
willingly-
reduced.
Yes, that's what Pastor Bill was talking
Though
about.
he was
willingly-
God,
He willingly made him.
he didn't cling to his godness powers.
He willingly
He
gave
gave up his divine privileges, took the humble position of a slave,
Just blur.
and was born as a human being. Yes.
Do you think he had the ability to think about
Who he was.
Yeah.
Okay, so did Libby just mention it?
Yeah.
So I do think that part of this, he never ceased to be God in any way. Like he was never like only 50% God or like Hercules
He like
or
woke up and
whatever.
he's like, I'm feeling 30% God.
It was never that. He never ceased to be God, but he made a choice, like Jessica said, to set aside those divine attributes, to set aside his power, and become reduced. Reduced sounds weird. Take on human form. He took on human form and set aside all the attributes that he had of God. He could have accessed those anytime. One guy likes to talk about it, like he had the gold God card, credit card in his wallet at all times, right? But he chose to not swipe the credit card of his godness and to truly live a human life. And he had a truly human experience. So with that human experience, to get to your question, is learning and growing. And also making mistakes and learning from our mistakes. So it sounds weird to say Jesus made mistakes, but mistakes are not necessarily sinful, right? Like, how do we learn? often through mistakes. Like,
But
how do you
how-
learn to
How
walk?
can he be perfect with making mistakes?
So,
He was
perfect-
sinful, he was perfect.
He was sinless. So,
Doesn't that say he was
Does like
perfect, though?
tripping over your own stair going into your house, is that sinful or is that a
No.
mistake?
Yes, it's sinful. You can't trip.
Like,
so he was perfect in the way that he was sinless. It's not, he didn't necessarily have to do everything
I cut the board
perfectly.
too short for my dad. I didn't-
He had a very human existence. You don't learn, like, that's how humans learn. Like, how do we learn to walk? By, like, stumbling around. Like he didn't just be like, pop up magically. He didn't just, like, learn how to talk. Do you think he ever said a word wrong and he's learning to speak? Do you think he ever forgot anything? Like he had a very human experience, right? And so it's hard to think about Jesus, God, doing that, but he did that by choice. And we can find a spot there where he chose to do that, at the same time never being less God than he was, but making a choice. This is tough to process, right? And we can get into heresy here because some people are like, well, he's 50% God, 50% human, and then and there's weirdness. No, somehow 100% God, 100% human, made a choice to live a true human life. Like this verse, this passage clearly talks about humble himself, die. Because how else would we have killed him? If he wasn't, like, if he was immortal human, like a God man, he was a God man, but like we wouldn't have been able to kill him, right? That kind of thing. He took on true humanity, and so that involved learning. So yeah, he had to learn. I also think he had to learn that who he was. Like that was part of the process too.
In the temple when he stayed behind.
Yeah, and so part of that I think was him figuring out. We don't know so much about what exactly was going on in Jesus' mind, but this is how we try to, with this passage, is super helpful to rectify his humanity with his full and complete deity never being diminished, because we don't want to take away like Jesus was like forced, enslaved. He chose this, right? It wasn't done to him. He chose it, right? Anyway.
I was going to add one thing. If we don't think that Jesus lived a fully human life, and we're like, well, if it's God, he can do whatever he wants. He can always save himself. He can. Then when we get to the passages, I think it's Hebrews, about like a great high priest who is able to sympathize with you. Like if Jesus didn't live this human life like us, then we can't really be like him, and he can't really understand us.
Right.
But he did. He was that baby. He was that toddler. He was that child. He was that son. He was that brother, doing things in the most perfect way as a human.
Yeah.
So we can.
So he
be
can
like him,
actually
we can
be our
understand us.
example, right? Like, if Hercules did something, we wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I can do that too, because he is Hercules.
It's like
right?
miracles. So like, well, he was God. Okay, but guess what? His miracles were done through the Father's power, not his own
And
power.
Jesus had the Spirit. So Jesus' life was truly an example to us because of his humanity. Yes, Addie?
Oh yeah. So it's like Jesus experienced like being human. Like humans like forget a lot of childhood just because like forget. Do you think like Jesus forgot like what it was like to be a baby?
Because you don't start making memories until you're like 3 years old.
I think he had a true human existence. So
Yes. Did he forget about Peter sometimes?
I think in his true human form, he probably had, he chose again to have the limitations of a human brain. So, but he also had but he was also a perfect human. So he was as human as God designed to be, like Adam before the fall. So I think there was some differences in his sinless state, like his authority over creation. We're getting way deep now. But so he was uncorrupted by sin, which made him a better human than any of us.
Does that mean he doesn't have to wear clothes?
So that's also part of it. But he wore clothes. All right, we got to get to the video.
Stumbling block to others.
That's what it's all about. All right. What's the reference? The what?
4:4. Sorry.
Is Jesus in this book?
No.
Most definitely. He's the central figure. That poem is all about him. And
He just said no.
it's all about what he did. We're all here because of him. It's all about him. He should be the center. We need to imitate the humility of the suffering Christ. He's our example.
It's like
Key verse. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, I say rejoice. Philippians 4:4. That's the verse. It's a song.
Question. Is it the verse, you know, that's like imitate me as I imitate Christ? Is that in Philippians?
No.
Oh, because we're talking about imitating Christ.
Yeah.
It would be like so perfect. Where is that verse found?
Isn't it when he's talking about? Oh, I forget. I was gonna say this many times. Don't follow Paul or Apollos.
Oh, yeah.
Follow Christ.
I want to share something. There's a verse in here that everyone uses, but we always want to talk about context.
4:13.
It says, I can do all things through Christ who
Yeah.
strengthens me. But he first says, like, I know what it's like to live in plenty. I know what it's like to be in want. But
He's
I
talking
know
about
that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's like, so it's not just like this promise of like, I can conquer Mount Everest because Christ is with me. Okay, like that's
I
not.
can win state championships.
But it's like
It's the ultimate
I
sports
can-
verse.
I can-
Everyone puts it on their sports things.
that verse. Like,
I can
you
do all things.
You can do hard things. You can
I
suffer
can-
like Christ.
I can
Because-
bench
Well,
400
you
pounds.
can also be victorious.
I can do all things. It says it in the Bible.
Yes.
All right, timeless truth.
What do you
Blank in all things through Christ.
I have a different timeless truth.
Yes.
Believe in all things through Christ.
No.
Okay.
Trust in all things.
It's
Not
okay.
trust.
Rejoice.
Rejoice.
Closer.
Praise?
Rejoice is perfect.
Okay. You. Brian
I
said
have
joy.
joy,
We'll go
but
rejoice.
Rejoice.
I have a new one. Contentment is
Have
the
joy
path.
in all things through
Brian,
Christ.
Madison's trying to say something.
I have a new one.
Okay.
Contentment is the path to finding joy.
Ooh, contentment is the path to finding
Contentment is the
joy.
path to finding-
That's a good one too. Any other ones?
I wrote it.
I can do all things. I can bench 400 pounds through Christ.
You can also use Christ's strength.
You just need to go underwater, and that's easy.
Or on the moon.
Remember yesterday, Addison, when I was trying to talk to you about how.
Thanks everybody, that's the book of Philippians!
And I